And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office. We're North Georgia's only live online morning show. Well, thank you for tuning in this morning. Our guest now is State Senator Michael Williams, and Senator Williams is a candidate for Georgia State Governor. He's running for the governor's house there in Atlanta. And Senator Williams, are you with us?
I am. I'm here.
Good morning. Good morning, Senator Williams. You said it was okay if I call you Michael? Is that what you...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, just call me Michael.
Okay. Now, I don't know how much time you have, but I have a long list. And I tell you what, I want to start... Well, I want to start out and let you know that I want to give you every opportunity to, I guess what I'm going to say, my words, no offense, explain yourself with the press conference. I'm gonna give you that, but I don't want to get stuck there. And I also want you to know I attended the press conference and I wrote an article about the press conference, and I have my own questions. Now, my article concerning the press conference is more about your relationship with the media and where that stands. And I'm not questioning your conservative values or anything whatsoever. I do want to start here at the press conference. This is going to take a lot of money to run a race like this. You put $1 million of your own money into this race, but you said, quote, at the press conference, and this is your quote, "If it takes every single dime in my name to defeat fake conservatives." How much are you willing of your own money to put into this race, and how far will you go?
Well, I think I was very clear at that press conference with what I said. In fact, I told other people this as well, that I am willing to put everything that I have into this race to make sure that people understand what's really going on down at the Capitol and how we have these elected officials and politicians that will get up on stage during the campaign trail, make all these promises, and then not deliver. And then the way they rationalize not delivering, again, it's a very elaborate process that they have down there. And we're seeing it play out right now in front of us with Obamacare. I think you were talking about earlier this morning how almost every single Republican House member and Senate member on the campaign trail just this past year were talking about repealing and replacing Obamacare. And they've even voted in the past to repeal Obamacare, but they can't do it now. And we have some of those same tactics that are done down in the Capitol. And I am just tired of having to run my life, run my business with these, again, government regulations and candidates and elected officials that just make it so much harder for us, and then rationalize the way they do it. I'm just frustrated with it.
Well, I want to get to the issues, and we will, and that's why I wanted to start with this first, Kelly, to get it out of the way. And the downside of campaigns to me is having to raise all this money to actually be a candidate, a formidable candidate in a race. So I was wondering, how's your fundraising going? I know you have a fundraiser coming up. I think it was with Dog the Bounty Hunter. I seen that. But how is your fundraising going? And are you going to be able to raise enough funds? And are you going to continue to fund your own campaign to keep this going?
Yeah, I guess the answer to all those questions is yes. We are excited about fundraising. Disclosures just came out, and if you kind of take the time to look through the disclosures, you'll see who is financing everybody's campaign. And I believe there's already articles kind of written about the different groups that are financing all these other candidates. The people that are financing our campaign, one is me, and then others it's the small dollar donors. We're only in the race for 4 weeks whenever disclosures came out, and we had already attracted contributions from a third of the state, from a third of the counties, and they're all small dollar donors. In fact, there was an article written in the AJC kind of making fun of us receiving a $3 donation from a bartender. I am extremely proud of that donation, because that's the type of people that we want behind our campaign, are the hardworking Georgians out there that want to see a difference in government and want to see results instead of excuses. So as far as fundraising, we're excited about. Yeah, we have Dog the Bounty Hunter. He is our campaign chairman. He's come out and endorsed us, and he's coming into town Saturday. We've got kind of a quaint private event for about 8 people. Tickets for that about two grand on Saturday night, and then Monday night we've got another one. We're going to limit that to about I think it's 20 people, and then Tuesday night we're going to have more of an open tickets for that are only $100. You can kind of come in and just hang out with them and meet them and talk to them. So no, we're excited about it, and kind of like I said earlier, I'm willing to put everything I have into this race.
Okay, so you're in it for the long haul. You're in it for the duration.
Correct.
Okay, well then let's flip the other side. You directly looked at the camera and asked Casey Cagle, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, to get out of the race, and you were very firm. That was a very firm, bold statement. What are you used reprehensible acts? And you said that he was, and I'm not quoting you, but I'm pretty sure if you go back to the video, you said, Casey, I know you're watching this because you're very interested, because you did not know today which reprehensible act I would reveal. Those are my words, because it's not quote. That's pretty close to what you said, right? Am I correct?
No, correct. That was one of the more interesting aspects of kind of leading up to that press conference, was as we were talking to different people, they had their own ideas of what reprehensible act we were going to come out with, and they were broad, they were diverse, and just to have the mindset, the psyche of the people out there in Georgia, that we just put out this one statement. We're going to kind of come out. We're going to talk about something Casey's done that's reprehensible. And then to have all these different ideas pop up in people's head, that alone tells me that the man is not fit to be the governor of the state of Georgia.
Well, so when you said you knew he was paying attention because he did not know which within the list of acts you would actually discuss, do you have a list yourself of things that you plan to reveal at your time at the Capitol working with the Lieutenant Governor?
Well, if I can, I want to kind of rephrase that just a little bit. My objective, what we want to do is, first of all, is win this campaign. We want to win this election because I believe there's a lot of really good things that we can do with me in the governor's office here in Georgia. So that is our number one priority. My number two priority is to expose what really happens down at the Capitol, to expose the process and to make people aware of the type of deals, the type of things that happen that put the lobbyists, the special interest groups, and a select few of political elite at the center of everything that happens. Going through that process and identifying and exposing what happens, there's going to be some information, that there's going to be some things that come out that people that are currently running aren't necessarily going to like, and it's going to make them look bad. So this isn't an attack specifically on Casey. While the press conference directly called him out, our campaign is not to go out to destroy Casey. Our campaign is to win the race and get us a very specific and clear message out there. And in that process, there's going to be a lot of fallout.
Okay, but I hear what you're saying, but your actions, and no disrespect, Michael, your actions are with the press conferences. When you say you're not out to destroy, I'm okay with that. But you did ask him to get out of the race. Let's go with the elephant in the room for me. No pun intended, Republicans. But let's go with that, because the press conference did not land with the media. I went this past weekend and I read every article. And I for 5 articles that were negative, Mr. Williams, only one was positive about the press conference. It did not land well. You had built up an expectation that didn't hit. They don't feel you delivered on that. And the biggest question is, you have made 2 claims now, 2 claims that you were approached by a member of Casey Cagle's team to get out of the race in a trade for a committee chairmanship. And I think at the GOP convention you said Appropriations Committee. Where do we stand with that? And the media, what's your take on the press conference?
Well, first of all, I would like to make one correction. I don't believe that I set this expectation. I put out a press conference. I put out a press release, again, that said that we're going to expose some reprehensible acts from our lieutenant governor. And then the press and the people, they kind of took that and they let their imaginations run wild. And I believe in that press release, I also mentioned how we're going to kind of take what we started, again, some of the comments we made at the convention. And most people automatically went to what you just referred to. From our campaign, from our perspective, again, this is all about exposing what happens down at the Capitol, the process that these bills go through. That's where we were coming from. So as far as disappointing the press's expectations, I can't worry about what the press is expecting out of me. What I have to focus on and worry about is the campaign that we're running, the people that we are talking to out there, the message that we are sending to them, and making sure that it lands with them, not necessarily with the press corps. And the feedback that we got from the press, you're absolutely right. We got beat up and killed over the weekend from the press. And while it was hard for me to read your article, I mean, I do believe it was one of the most honest articles, even though it was kind of negative about me. It was, again, I do feel like it was honest.
Well, it was honest. Now, I'm just going to tell you it was honest, yeah. and I appreciate that. My article was tough, but what I did, and that's just who I am and how I approach things. What I did is I went to the press conference, and I asked the final question, and then I read everybody's article, and then I watched what took place through this past week at the and I want to switch gears here. Let's go with that. SB 254. Now, you held up a copy of SB 254, and that is the I forget the exact title of that bill to be exact, but that is the let me get the title of that. I know I have it here somewhere. SB 254, the minimum annual salary for deputies appointed by each sheriff. And that's just the first line of that bill that you sponsored and introduced, along with Senator Greg Kirk and Josh McCune. And you held up a copy of that bill, and this is the one time you used the word reprehensible, and you somewhat, again, not quoting, said Casey Cagle was using our law enforcement as a political prop. And just this week, 58 sheriffs in the state of Georgia came out and endorsed Cagle over at the Sheriff's Association. Do you directly make or call Cagle responsible for 254 not coming to the floor for a vote, or what do you say about that? Casey stopped that bill from moving forward. Now, again, your direct question was, did he stop it from making it to the floor? My goal, it would have been great if we could have made it to the floor. And I know there's been some comments out there about, well, I introduced this bill, I think, 3 days before crossover. How can I even expect it to have made it to the floor? Again, with the process that's out there, there's been bills that have been killed in committee the day of crossover, the day before, that make it onto the floor by utilizing that process. So the fact that it was only introduced 3 days before doesn't mean that it couldn't have made it. My main objective was, whenever, let me back up. I sit on the Public Safety Committee, and we had a day that was basically back to badge day, and all these sheriffs came down, and they were talking to us about what they wanted. And their number one thing was pay increases for their sheriff's deputies. We passed 4 or 5 bills, and not a single one of those addressed the pay raises for their deputies. So my main objective was to make people aware that we need to support our law enforcement officers, and if we could get it passed that session, great. If not, we still have next session. We have a 2-year biennial where any bill that we present this year, we can carry on next year. And had we gotten support from leadership, had we gotten, Casey saying, if people from Casey's office saying, look, that's a good idea, let's talk about it, we can't do it this year, but let's do it next year, those sheriffs would have gone back happy. We could have had some momentum going into next session to get it passed. But instead, everywhere I went, trying to get senators to support this, trying to just get a committee hearing. And we can have committee hearings even after crossover for our bills, again, because of the biennial process. Everywhere I turned, it was dead stop because Casey didn't want it. And then for him to come out 10 days before this annual meeting of sheriff's officers and say, oh, I support pay raises for sheriff's deputies, it's a slap in the face to sheriff deputies. And I was actually at that convention yesterday, and I spoke to them. And before I spoke to the group, I had a little private meeting with a handful of them. And one of them was,
one of the sheriffs that was on that list that sponsored or that endorsed Casey, and he was just going off about all these issues and how, you know, government's not helping out and they're making it harder, and just ranting and raving about how bad things are. And I just looked at him, I said, "Are you sure you're endorsing the right candidate?" And he laughed and chuckled a little bit, and through kind of having a conversation with him, what I realized was that the reason he was endorsing Casey wasn't necessarily because he believed in what Casey believes in, but because years ago he told Casey that if he ever ran for governor, he would be there for him. And his word was more important to him than some of the things that Casey might be fighting on him for. That's just, that shows me the integrity of the sheriffs around our state, that even though Casey might not represent what he wants, he told him years ago he would be there for him, and that word that he made was his bond, and he wasn't going to go against it.
So you did address the Sheriff's Association yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah, well, let me go back to that. So I want to just clear up a couple things, because I've heard the same thing. It's been said to me that SB 254 was 3 days before crossover, and it was too late, and that Casey Cagle, the lieutenant governor, really is not the reason it did not get into committee and get out and move over to the House. So you say that it still could have, the legislative process still could have done that, and you're saying directly Casey Cagle's the reason that didn't move forward? I'm just asking because I thought I heard that earlier, but I wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, I am saying that the fact that Casey was stopping it had a direct impact on its inability to move forward. Again, this process is a very complex process, and I can't sit here in all honesty and say, even with the support of Casey, that we would have made it to the floor. I can't say that. But what I can say is that because of him stopping it, it did not move forward.
Well, let me say this. Now, SB 254, I want to stay with that just a minute. The minimum wage, we're just going to, I don't want to misrepresent the bill, but the minimum wage for sheriff's deputies that are hired in, how did that get paid for? Now, one source tells me, and I was reading the bill, was there a tax proposed to pay for this? How were you proposing, and would you propose to pay for this?
Sure. There's this bill, and I guess let me back up again. There's actually 3 bills that I introduced. This was the first one. And as I was going around kind of talking to some of the senators, I got 2 main oppositions. One of them was Casey. The other one was it was an unfunded mandate. And we were basically, this bill would require counties to pay their law enforcement officers, but yet the state would not give the counties the money to pay for it. So I guess an unfunded mandate. So I went back to the drawing board, and I drafted up 2 bills. One of them was a constitutional amendment that allowed for law enforcement officers to be treated differently in our tax code than other citizens. And then the other one was a bill that would provide a tax credit, a refundable tax credit to law enforcement officers in the state of Georgia that don't meet a minimum salary. So the funding on the second bill that I proposed would come from the state. The first one was an unfunded mandate. But again, for me, it was, we have to get this conversation out there about our law enforcement, because so many of our law enforcement officers, they are having to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. Several of them qualify for food stamps. And when you look at the quality of life that our law enforcement officers are living, they have some of the highest divorce rates, some of the highest suicide rates, and a lot of this comes from financial issues. And they already have an extremely stressful job. Then you throw on top of that financial struggles and marital struggles, it's just a powder keg waiting to explode. And we need to start talking about it. We've got to find a way to address this so that we have the safety we need and we're taking care of our law enforcement officers.
Okay, you said in the press conference, you said something to the reference, we can find $100 million for stadiums and so on and so forth. You know, where were you going with that? I mean, some of the things that are going on down there, you said what really happens? So what really happens under the Capitol? I mean, you say your campaign is going to start exposing what really happens. Then you made a reference down there at the Capitol. We can find $100 million for stadiums. So what really happens down there at the Capitol? Give us some things.
Well, sure. One of the things that I talk about as I'm going around speaking to different events is there's a specific bill. It was, I can't remember the number right now, but it was the Rural Georgia Jobs Investment Act. It came out of the House, came out of the Senate, and I'm on the finance committee. They present it to us, and this bill was straight up crony capitalism. It takes $60 million of tax credits, puts it into an investment fund. A handful of other investors take $40 million, stick it into the same investment fund. So now you have an investment fund of $100 million. Now, who owns that investment fund? You would think the state would own 60% and the investors would own 40%. The investors own 100% of that fund. So basically, the state of Georgia gives the small group of investors $60 million for doing what? Well, according to the way it was sold, we have to invest it in rural Georgia. We all know that rural Georgia needs help right now. They're struggling economically, that they need jobs. But this bill does not do that. It kind of lists out some of the things it's supposed to do. Invest in rural Georgia, invest in agriculture, invest in equipment. But then the last little paragraph, the little line says, anything that supports those areas. And that could be an accounting firm up in New York, or an advertising agency over in California. And again, it just takes money from taxpaying citizens and gives it to this select group of people. Now, this bill died. It died in committee one of the last couple of days before crossover, before session. It comes back on the floor as a detachment to a governor's bill, and it's voted out. So again, that's just one example of how the lobbyists that wanted this bill passed found the way to get $60 million to a specific group of people, and all on the backs of taxpayers.
Well, let me ask you a question. Does Georgia, and I'm going somewhere with this, Senator, does Georgia any longer have a tax-free holiday for back-to-school purchases?
Yes.
Okay, we do. All right. Because here is my why did you vote? Because I came back, and I don't want to say did you vote. I came back, and when you said $100 million stadiums, and I'll just tell you, anytime I'm in the room, sir, anything you say, I'm going to come back and listen to it, and I'm going to go look at voting records. I don't know. I'm going to get a life. I'm going to get a life one of these days, but for some reason, this is what I enjoy to do. When you said $100 million stadiums, you piqued my interest, and this is not the direction you were going. But I have a question on the exempting Super Bowl tickets, the tax. Why did you vote present? Why did you vote present on that? Because I came back because I said, hey, I want to see how you voted on that. Why did you vote present on that?
I didn't vote on that.
Right, you voted present.
I wasn't there.
Okay, you were not there?
Correct. Yeah, I wasn't there when that vote went down.
Okay, because the vote before it, the bill before it, because on the day's calendar, the bill before it you voted for, and the bill after it you voted for it, and the one, because I went down the votes, but that one you voted present. And the reason I'm bringing that up, and I'm sorry to go a different direction, is because when you said $100 million stadiums, I will tell you personally what actually got to me, and a lot of people I know, was exempting a Super Bowl ticket of taxes to continue to help what we call Atlanta, and what it brings Atlanta when rural Georgia is. So I mean, I didn't mean to go off there, but you were not there.
No. Well, no, I can't say I wasn't there on that day. I was not on the floor when that vote happened. We have people, we have lobbyists, we have our constituents that call us out onto the ropes to talk. We go into meetings to discuss different things. So while we try to be on the floor as much as possible to get every vote, there are votes that we miss because we are doing other things while votes are going on.
Okay, to me, sir,
and I wish I could tell you I knew where I was at that moment in time, but I don't know where I was. I just know I wasn't on the floor.
To me, that was a big one, because I basically almost went through everybody's vote, and I know a couple state senators that could tell you that they heard an earful from me about that vote. So anyhow,
no, exactly.
Let me go a different direction. I don't want to. Go ahead, sir.
But Brian, if I may, that's another perfect example of how if the politicians in Georgia, their funders, their lobbyists, the people that are raising all this money for them to run for governor or other offices want something, they find a way to get it to them. And as far as finding the money for these law enforcement officers, it needs to become a priority for the state of Georgia to make sure that our law enforcement officers are paid a livable wage, and they don't have to go through some of these stresses, from these financial stresses that add additional stress onto the job. So it's not a matter of we don't have the money. It's a matter of, is it a priority of our elected officials and politicians to keep us safe and to take care of our law enforcement officers?
Let me, I don't know what your time frame is. I want to keep going if we can, because I want to ask you, if I ask you something and it's not an exact quote of yours, please don't hesitate to clear that up. I read a lot of articles, so I'm going to come out of the box with this. You made kind of a reference to my words on lobbyist and Chamber of Commerce actually being the driving force moving bills through the Atlanta legislature. Is that generally what, somewhere in the area of some comments you've made at some meetings? And what's your take on that?
No, that's absolutely correct. Again, part of our campaign and part of our message is that the people are not at the center of the process down at the Capitol. It's lobbyists, it's special interests. Again, just look at the bills that are passed. You mentioned one with the Super Bowl tickets. You know, the NFL is not charging people that have $5,000 to buy tickets to go to the Super Bowl sales tax. I don't understand why people that can pay $5,000 to go to a Super Bowl, to go to a game, can't be forced to pay sales tax, just like the rest of us have to pay sales tax on the things that we buy and do. They are carving out, again, special interests, the people that are backing them financially, but it's not the people of Georgia. And we've got to put the people of Georgia back at the center of the process around the Capitol. So I agree 100% with what you said, and I am out there campaigning on that.
All right, let's move to health care. The health care bill, we do not know what Obamacare is going to do. We did not expand Medicaid in the state of Georgia. That I'm aware of, we did not take the expansion money and expand it. What do we do concerning rural hospitals in Georgia? And let me frame this up, because I understand the population pockets, and we're very clear on where the population pockets are and big groups of voters throughout the state. But at North Georgia here, where we're in a very strong Republican base all the way up, I call it the 515 belt here, that really comes out and votes that all of our rural hospitals are struggling. The one here in the county where I'm at closed, which we now have a new facility, not a hospital, that has, where's your take on how we handle rural hospitals and healthcare in Georgia? And let's stay focused in the state.
Well, I think as we kind of help Georgia become world leaders in certain areas that we are already excelling in, such as financial technology, such as logistics and supply chain. We've got the Cyber Command Center coming in with cybersecurity. Just some of these areas that if we could help us in the state of Georgia become world leaders in these areas, and then support rural parts of Georgia and their economies, as those economies start to grow, that will just directly help some of these rural hospitals, and also the technologies that are out there, telemedicine and some other things going on, encouraging and supporting those to get this medicine and to get the health coverage that they need out there would be a good start. I am not a healthcare expert, and I'm actually leaning on a lot of other people, some of our supporters, doctors that know a lot more about it, to kind of continually educate me on what we can really do to help and to benefit rural Georgia as far as healthcare, but also just the industry, the health industry altogether. Again, I talked earlier about lobbyists controlling what happens at the Capitol. We have insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and large hospitals that are controlling our healthcare industry across the country. And until we can get them kind of out and put people back at the center of it, I don't think we're going to get the results and the relief that we need.
Okay, you see the states that are getting the backlash now, governors, lieutenant governors, by some of the bills they've passed. And let me ask you two pretty tough questions here. 2 years ago, I think on the top of my head, 2 years ago, the legislature there in Georgia the state sent over a religious freedom bill to Governor Deal's desk, which he vetoed. Would you have signed that bill? And if you become governor of the state of Georgia, will you sign a religious freedom bill if it's sent to your desk?
Yes, yes. In fact, I believe I'm the only candidate that has actually put that on his website in literature, that I support religious liberties and freedoms.
Okay, the governor of North Carolina recently, the former governor was not reelected in North Carolina. A lot of controversy over what they call the bathroom bill, and I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look at what they're calling they're in special session in Texas over what they call the bathroom bill, the transgender. Would you support any kind of similar bill in that way in the state of Georgia? Although it's becoming very controversial, even IBM and the big businesses come out and would you support? I'm going to call it a bathroom bill if you've looked at the one in Texas and the one they have in North Carolina concerning transgender.
One of the things that is just extremely, again, frustrating and mind-numbing for me is how our society is being tricked into believing that there are no firm truths. We are trying to be, or people are leading us down the road so that we could become blind sheep that just follow whatever we're being told. If you're a male, you're a male. If you're a female, you're a female. And our genetics makes us different. And I would support anything that males go to male bathrooms, females go to female bathrooms, and that's just the way it is.
Well, I want to apologize to you and all of our viewers that I have to actually ask those kind of questions, and I hate that it's come to that in our society that I have to ask those questions. But we have a situation here in a grade school just last year where it brought thousands out because we had a young student that was requesting to go to a bathroom of their opposite sex, and just the county north of me. So I do know that is something coming down the road. Georgia does not have sanctuary cities, correct?
I thought that Atlanta was a sanctuary city.
Okay, well, I asked and I understand I was told it was actually a law on the books in the state of Georgia. I was told because I directly asked House Speaker David Ross in an interview. I do a post-legislative session interview with him every year, and I asked him if Georgia had sanctuary cities, and he adamantly said no. The state of Georgia does not have sanctuary cities. So, but there's a. Go ahead, sir.
Well, the comment that you made, where the state of Georgia has it on their books, is it's a law that we don't have sanctuary cities. I just can't help but laugh and chuckle because we have several laws that are not enforced. So, just by saying that it's a law that's not supposed to be doesn't mean that it doesn't actually happen because. Our lottery system, on the books, our laws say that they're supposed to spend or allocate about 35% of the lottery proceeds to education. They're only doing about 23%. So just because something is the law doesn't mean that it's being enforced, especially when it comes to government.
English as a second language is one of the largest job growth in our schools, our state schools. Every year we continue to hire more teachers, ESL teachers, rural counties for English as a second language. Just one right here. Now, people will tell you English is the official language of Georgia, and I understand that. Would you support a constitutional amendment making constitutionally English the official language of the state?
As a senator, I believe Josh McCoon had a bill that did that, and I signed on in support of that. As governor, constitutional amendments I really have no say in. They go straight to the people. But again, looking at what I've done in the past, I have supported that, and I don't think. In fact, I know I would not change my opinion on that.
Okay, I asked you in the first interview about casinos in the state of Georgia. You want to reiterate your position on gaming in the state of Georgia?
Sure. Yes, again, I think when we talked last time, it was about the bill that was before us, which
Yes.
was, again, one of the worst pieces of public policy I think I've seen in a while. It was taking the proceeds from gambling, putting it into the Hope Scholarship program. And like I just mentioned, we already have a mechanism to fund Hope Scholarship, and we're not complying with what the law is and funding that. And on top of that, we are experiencing escalating cost in higher education. Anybody that understands economics know that if you put more money into an already saturated market, those costs are going to climb even higher. And that's the last thing that we need here in Georgia is for our higher education costs to keep going up and up and up. So I was completely against that bill, and I would be against gambling as well. One of the things also that frustrates me, I believe we talked about this as well, is down at the Capitol, very rarely do we actually talk about the subject matters. For example, in gambling, I don't recall many discussions that we were having where we were talking about the results and the impact that gambling would have on the local communities and our families and stuff like that. It was all about what we were going to do with the money. So anytime some of these big issues come up, we need to remind our elected officials to actually talk about the issues, talk about the subject matter of the bill, and not some of these, education. It's always about education or kids. That's what they use to get all these bills through that don't really benefit education or the kids.
Well, sir, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. We've already been on here 40 minutes, and I could just stay and talk state issues and things concerning this governor's race all day, and I don't know what your time frame is, but I am going to have to move along. But so I want to do this. I want to give you an opportunity because I don't like to get into some of this discussion without really staying focused on issues. So would you like to comment on a couple issues in your campaign, some of your format that you have, that you're going around the state talking to these small groups? I've noticed you talked to the Tea Party over in Dalton, and you've been attending a lot of these small groups and getting some direct focus one-on-one. What are some of the things you're out there talking about on the campaign trail?
Well, one of them is what we've kind of talked about a little bit already. It's just the process that occurs down there that puts the lobbyists, the special interest groups, and a select few of political elite at the center of what goes on. Some other things is just taxes, fiscal responsibility. The state of Georgia has gone from a $15 billion budget to a $25 billion budget in the past 7 years. There's a 66% increase in government spending and tax collections, taking money from us. A couple of things that I don't know many people. In fact, I don't know of a single person that's experienced a 66% increase in their income over the past 7 years. The state of Georgia hasn't had a 66% increase in their GDP either. It's only been about a 33%. But yet we're taking more money out of people's pockets. But yet, what are we getting benefits from that? Have we seen that much an improvement in government services? I don't know anybody that can say yes, they have either. So where's that money going? Well, as a CPA, I actually enjoy reading our reports. I think we were talking about this before we actually came on. I've been able to identify hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $1 billion, where we are just wasting every single year. That if we were to put better internal controls and more accountability into to government, we could save some money. And my goal would be for us to eventually get to a 0% state income tax and move more towards a fair tax.
You talk about the rate of growth. If you mind, if I go on that, you bring up the rate of growth, and I have asked that question, the rate of growth of the state budget, and every year it seems like, to me, my words, an extra billion. But when I discuss this with lawmakers in the state about the rate of growth, this is the answer I get, and I want you to respond. The answer I get is, first of all, for so many of those years, we were returning to spending levels. We had not recovered from the recession of 2009, 10, and 11, and we were returning. So that growth was returning. And then the second part of that answer I get from a lot of lawmakers is the increase is also due to the rate of growth of Georgia with jobs and the movie industry and so on and so forth. So, I mean, what would you say to that answer that I'm getting from other lawmakers concerning the rate of growth of the budget in the state of Georgia?
Sure. First of all, as far as returning back to normal, quote unquote, normal spending, I think that's a bunch of BS. We had, as Republicans, an opportunity back in 2010, 2011 to actually cut state spending, to reduce the size of government, and we had to because of the money just wasn't coming in. And then they took that opportunity, they just wasted it, they squandered it, and they increased it 66%. Again, we all suffered from the economic crisis of 2008. Every single one of us did. But yet we don't have a 66% increase in our income. Why does the state of Georgia? So I think that's a cop-out. Nobody else that I know of has been able to do what they're saying they've done by the force of law, taking money out of your pocket and putting into the state treasury. Then also the claim about population growth and inflation. I went back and I actually kind of charted it out and looked at, okay, with inflation and population growth, using where we were, at that 15,000 mark, where should we be? And about half of the budget increase comes from inflation and population growth. And the other half comes from increased taxation.
Well, increased taxation, I mean, we do have one of the largest tax increases in the history of the state with the transportation. And I don't want to say, I never want to come across negative where teachers, I support teachers, but we've put money in there. We did a 20% pay raise for Georgia state law enforcement and Georgia state law enforcement. I'll just leave it at that. Pay raises for teachers, schools. The governor, the current governor, attempted, my words, to take over failing schools up to 100. That failed at the polls, but then they turned around and recrafted legislation that almost gives them the same opportunity. What about failing schools in the state? How would you address education and the direction it's been going in the last several years?
I'll answer that question. I do need to go after this, if that's okay.
Yes,
I've got another meeting I've got to run to. First of all, again, just talking about budget and money. Education. I live in Forsyth County, and we have, and in my mind, and I believe staff can prove this out, the best education system in the state. We only spend about $8,500 educating our kids. The state average is 10 to 11,000, depending upon which report you use, which kind of blows my mind. You can have two different numbers on that, but 10 to 11,000 on educating students. Some school districts are spending upwards of 14 to 16,000, so almost twice what we're doing, and not getting near the result. So I strongly believe that we are, again, not using the money that we have in the right areas to get the benefit that we can in our education system. To address some of the failing schools, 40 to 50% attendance rates is what several of these failing schools have. We're not getting the kids in the schools for them to learn. So I don't care if the state comes in and takes over or whoever comes and takes over. You've got to get these kids involved in attending school. So we've got to support the communities and find ways to get these kids to school so that they can so they can learn. And also one of the things that I'd like to do as in regards to education, instead of having appointed state school board members, have them elected by the people. The number one success factor across all demographics for the education of a child is the involvement of the parent. We have to get the parents more involved. Again, it kind of goes back to the attendance rates at some of these failing schools. And what better way than to give them another elected official they can hold accountable instead of it being appointed by the governor. So those are just a few of the ideas.
Michael, who with Casey Cagle's team offered you the Appropriation Committee chairmanship to get out of the race?
I can't tell you right now.
Will you tell us? Will you eventually tell us who offered you this? You've made the accusation. That's the only reason I'm so strong with it. It's just the way I am personally. People make an accusation. So we're not the failing New York Times, okay? Or fake CNN.
I hear you. So I hear you. I appreciate the question. What I will tell you is by the end of this campaign, I believe that you and everybody else will be happy, will be content with the campaign we ran, the way we went about doing it, and it will kind of all make sense at the end.
Well, what really is going on under the Gold Dome, we're very interested in, Senator Williams. And if you, when you start putting what really goes on, please don't leave us out. Don't hesitate to contact me. You have our number. We appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming on and answering any question. I want to say while you're on the air, you got to go. Mr. Williams does not get the questions. He doesn't know what direction I'm going in. And I want to tell you, he's a stand-up guy for coming in and, just taking any question that comes his way. Thank you very much. You have a nice day, sir.
It was my pleasure, Brian. Thanks a lot.
And that is our guest. That has been our guest, Senator, State Senator Michael Williams. That is a candidate for governor of Georgia. When we come back, I'm going to recap a little of that. I have another guest coming up. Have you heard about the Crossover Fest? We're going to talk to Steve Fallon's going to come in. We've got a great festival coming up I want you to be aware of. That'll be later in the show. But I'm going to take a brief break, get a drink of water. I'm calmed down. I might have to get worked up over something. BKP here. Take a break. Hey, I'm your host, BKP, the voice of rural America, North Georgia's only live online morning show. I'm really enjoying this morning. First of all, if you ever want to get in touch with us, 706-889-9700. That's the number right there, 706-889-9700. And chief at FetcherNews.com. Follow us on Twitter at FetcherNews and at FYNTV. Okay, State Senator Michael Williams, I just want to play this. I want to let you know why I asked that final question. And go to the GOP. Senator Michael Williams addresses state GOP and put it up. Now, this is a video, and I want to let you play this because I want you to know we just had State Senator Michael Williams. This is his speech for a couple seconds here. At the state GOP convention, and I want you to hear this. Pull that one up, Sam.
Americans such as yourself. The establishment and the career politicians they finance, they see our movement and they know we're coming for them, and they are scared. Not 25 minutes ago, back there in this room, I was offered the appropriations chairmanship for the Senate if I did not run. Let me be clear. I am not running for power or for privilege or for prestige. I am running because I am sick and tired of career politicians who do not care about us.
Back to me. Right there, back there in that room, not 20 minutes ago, I was offered the Appropriations Committee chairmanship to get out of this race. Now, folks, that is big, okay? Now, you heard he came out in front of 1,500 people and said that, okay? Down at the Capitol last week, he said himself that he said it a second time in his press conference, his 12-minute press conference. State Senator Michael Williams said that a member of Casey Cagle, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle's team, okay, offered him a committee chairmanship to get out of the race. Now, is that a big deal? To me, yes, it is. Because that's 2 times you make an accusation about somebody, directly make an accusation. And if you're going to make an accusation, hey, put it out there. We're not the, you can't have the unnamed sources of the New York Times and the unnamed sources. We are so upset with the New York Times saying this happened and that happens, the failing New York Times, and the fake Washington Post, that when we hear stuff like that, you need to tell us. I think if a member of Casey Cagle's team walked up to that man and said, if you'll get out of the race, we will give you the appropriations. Now, let me tell you what that is. That's power. Big power. Chairman of Appropriations. Your budget. We just talked about the budget. 25, 28 billion, whatever it is. That's almost as big control of that many millions of dollars, because what you are is you're the chairman and you finalize in that committee what the budget is and you appropriate it out to the areas it's going to go in. So yesterday, when the Speaker of the House, David Ralston, of Georgia was able to say to Gilmer County, we're going to do $300,000 for our new outdoor exercise walking trail area, which I'm happy with that. But that was done in an appropriations. It was appropriated for that. So he's making an accusation that the Appropriations Committee chairmanship would be given to him if on the Senate side, if he got out of the race. So yes, that is big, offering jobs behind closed doors. I think he needs to give the name and put it out there. That's my opinion. I'm not questioning his mettle as far as his Appropriations Committee. As far as his conservative credentials, I'm not. I hear Mr. Williams a very nice guy. I'm not questioning it. And what did you hear? Our viewers out there, you heard him say it was tough to read my article, but honest. Okay, so I'm your host, BKP, and that's all I'm going to. Now, another thing on the governor's race, the state of Georgia. Hunter Hill, candidate for governor, State Senator Hunter Hill, will be on the show next Thursday. Okay, next Thursday, this upcoming Thursday at 9 o'clock. So he'll be our guest at 9 o'clock, Hunter Hill. And I have talked to the head of the campaign, Brian Kemp's campaign, Secretary of State Kemp's campaign, and he's planning to be in the studio. All right. So, but I will say this, just so you know, I've not, the Cagle campaign, Casey Cagle's campaign has not reached out to us and discussed anything about an interview or coming over and being in the studio. Not that I'm not saying he's not going to, we just haven't communicated with the Cagle campaign yet. So we do have Hunter Hill set up for next Thursday, and State Senator Hunter Hill and Brian Kemp's campaign is setting up now to come into the studio. And I'm going to tell you, let me look at this camera and tell you, one of my goals is because I don't want to start naming names, but those teleprompter podium, debates, liberal debates that they have, I want to host. I want to host FYNTV.com. I want to moderate a Republican primary debate between these governor's candidates, because I don't want to see the John Ossoff, Karen Handel, and I don't want to see that. I do not want to see a debate for downtown Atlanta. I don't hate Atlanta. I don't hate the people. I dislike Atlanta, but I don't hate it. I don't dislike the people, but I'm glad. Here's what I am. I'm glad you're there and I'm here. That's what I am. It's that simple. If you're in Atlanta, I'm happy as hell for you. Stay right there. Enjoy yourself. Have a nice day. Get a latte, get some foam on the top, ride a damn bicycle somewhere. Do what you want. But what am I? I'm glad you're there and I'm here. Oh, where'd that come from? Anyhow, I want to moderate a Republican primary debate between these candidates, not one of those Ossoff, Karen Handel, stand up at the podium, 1 minute, sir, you have 15 seconds to respond. I want to get into some real issues for the people of the state of Georgia and most of the rural areas. So here's what I do. I'll have a rural area. There you go. Rural Georgia. Got it. Finally figured it out. Bada bing, bada boom. Here it is. Rural Georgia governor debate for rural issues. Let's talk about rural hospitals. Let's talk about internet that we don't have. Let's talk about the speed of the internet we don't have. Let's talk about the economic growth for rural Georgia that we are interested in. There you go. How about that? All right.